The following is a Productions original series.
Hello and welcome to Walk and Roll Live. I'm Doug Vincent along with Eric Aguilar normally, but he's off in a class that what's the word I'm looking for? Interfered with him being here. So he'll be back soon. I think he's off another week next week and then he'll be back. But I'm a polio survivor, crutch and brace user for years, then transitioned into a wheelchair user over the last 20 years. And with me today, I've got my former guest and I think one under your belt as a co-host as well. But Tia Rosa is back with us. So maybe you could reintroduce yourselves to everybody.
Hi, I'm Tia Rosa. I am a T12 paraplegic. Celebrated my 20th anniversary this past April.
Very nice. So this is SCI month, right?
It is.
So,
September is SCI month, yes.
So do you say happy CSI month? How does that go?
Say that one more time.
I said, do you say happy CSI month? What's the greeting?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe I should come up with one. Yeah, we say happy SCI anniversary, happy Alive Day, happy Rebirth Day. I like the Rebirth Day because then I got two.
Yeah,
I got the actual birthday and then a rebirth day. It's all how you look at it, and every year for me, it's always like I always look back and wonder, okay, what have I learned this past year? Reflect on it, and so try to get a lot of positive out of it.
I like that.
Because you survived another year.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, it's not always, roses and candlelight, right?
Right.
But yeah, I mean, you look at the blessings that you have, and you learn, but also when you meet new, because I've met a couple new survivors
recently.
And when they're in their dark moments, it's like, okay, what can you do to bring that positivity, but yet not dismiss,
right,
what they're feeling and the hurt and the bitterness and the anger and everything that comes with that, right?
Yeah.
I always tell them, like, you have to allow yourself to go through the motions, because if you push them aside, they will service in a, sometimes in a worse way or a not so healthy way. So allow everybody to have that, but be that person for them that they feel safe and they feel comfortable that they can just share that.
Yeah.
And then let them know that it's not always going to be this bad.
That's one of the things I like about this program is it's a safe space. I always say for folks to share those things that you don't want to share every day. You do have challenges every day, but you don't want to bore people with that.
Yeah.
So you get an opportunity to kind of get it off your chest here, and so for you 20 plus years in, do you still have days where you every once in a while it'll creep up on you?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I would be lying if I say, oh, no, it's just fine, because
it's puppies and rainbows.
Yeah, because I'm single. I live alone. My kids are grown. My middle son just got married in June. And I have to say, I got another birthday this summer. I got a year older, and it's the loneliness, being alone. That's really hard, especially when you're disabled, because your life is just challenging. You want to grab something from the top shelves, you can't. And then you just, I'm pleading with God or, whatever power you believe in, like, give me 5 minutes. Let me stand for 5 minutes. I promise I'll get back in that chair, but I need 5 minutes to get done what I need to get done.
Yeah, there's only so much a grabber can reach, right?
Oh, yeah. Just stuff like that. Or just the fact of you have nobody to talk to, and then, yes, you do have the support groups and you have other people, but we always put on ourselves like, well, we don't want to bother anybody with that.
Yep.
And it's like, where does that stem from? Where does it come? Because able-bodied people, when they have a bad day, they talk about it. Or, so why do we feel that we're such a burden? And I want that to get out of the way.
Yeah.
Because like simple questions, like, if somebody asks you like, hey, how are you doing? When you're having a bad day, you really want to know, are you sure you want that question answered? Because you're really getting me today at a really, and And so, yes, I do have those moments where I'm like, okay, I'm done. I've done it now. I'm tired of it and don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah.
But then, you look around and you see the people that you've met that you would not have met, if your life was, because I would have probably taken a different route. So when the question comes like, would you do it different when you could do it all over again? And honestly, how that might sound so weird. I'm like, no, I don't think I do.
Yeah.
It's some moments, yes, I would wish I could walk, but would I want to do my whole life over? No.
And I hear that a lot, from people that post-injury or, whatever has brought them to disability. They say the same thing. I wouldn't change a thing. It's made me who I am today, and I love who I am today, and all those things. Yeah.
Because the part that in my situation that I can't walk, that's a small part of the whole thing. The person that I've become the last 20 years, what I'm teaching my children, my grandchildren, would I have had that same? Because people say like, well, you probably have a different life. Of course we would have a different life. I would still be a good person. I would probably still have children, grandchildren. It would be different, but just I think myself, my inner, the person that I am now, and how I look at things, how I look at people, that has, that has changed because of what I had to go through.
Yeah, I think that's so important for people to realize. It is such a small part of what your life is post-injury or, for me, it was polio at a year old. I mean, I don't know any different, but still,
you don't know
it's a small part of my life, really.
Yeah.
It's
and I do everything that I used to. I'm still driving. I can, I can cook. I can see people. I can go at work. I do sports. Now, if I was bedridden or I could not move a limb, nothing at all, I don't know, right? I can't compare that because I've never been in that situation. But looking at my life, what I had and what I now, that when I mentioned the first time, my bigger goal when I was in the hospital was get back on my horse because that was what I was used to. And that's what I did. So I got everything that I wanted to do, found the ways to do it differently. And I'm like, you know what? Yeah, life's not that bad.
Yeah,
it's not that bad.
Well, from time to time, we get letters. And this was, we got a new letter from the first person that we got a letter from, and I've enlisted Tia to read it for us. So Eric's not here, but in his honor, I know he loves this jingle. So I'm going to play this to intro it.
We get letters, oh so many letters, and it's time to share them with you.
All right. So would you like to read our letter from Becca?
Yes. So this is a letter from Becca that she sent to you guys. So as we approach Labor Day, Jeremy, our class, and I wanted to take a moment to thank you for all your invaluable support and collaboration. Your hard work and dedication have made a difference, and we've enjoyed every step of our journey together. Labor Day is a time to celebrate the contributions of everyone who works tirelessly to make the world a better place. We hope you take this well-deserved break to relax, recharge, and reflect on all the great things you've accomplished. Wishing you a wonderful and restful Labor Day. Warm regards, Miss Becca, teacher and advisor.
Very nice. Very nice. Then nice to hear from them again. That was, if you remember, a few months ago, we got a letter from her, and they had a class project. Becca is the teacher. Jeremy was one of the class members, and they were researching something dealing with disability, and they found our website and found what they were looking for. I believe it was blindness that was on our resource page, and that helped them and the whole class with their projects that they were working on. So they were kind enough to send us a letter and say how we'd helped them out and affected them. So nice to hear from them again. Thank you, Becca. We appreciate it. Also, in kind of looking through our statistics and all that, I found that other than the United States, as you can imagine, is our number one country for listeners for Walk and Roll Live. But number 2 and number 3 are New Zealand and Hong Kong for whatever reason. So those are number 2 and number 3. So wanted to give a shout out to New Zealand and Hong Kong, and also to Terry Marble, who is an avid listener, always is having kind words when I see him, or he'll email me. So thank you, Terry, for listening to the show. Thank you to last week's guest, Eddie Flores, for joining us last week and having on an open and honest conversation about his experiences. And also, I want to thank Eddie, because I ask this all the time, and Eddie has really taken it to heart. He's been sending me some information about different organizations that are having different events, and I've been putting those on our events page. And after our interview today, I'll talk about that a little bit. So I think that's all I have kind of for the pre-interview topics. But I do want to say that we've got a special guest today. Coming up, we're going to interview with Autism BrainNet. We're going to learn about brain donation and autism research with Isa DeWoody and Dr. David Amaral. So let's hear from Agyar Professional Training. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share.
At Agyar Professional Training, we know that your greatest asset is your team. Investing in their development, knowledge, and happiness is essential for your business's success and growth. To achieve new heights, it's important to hire intelligent, talented individuals and empower them to excel in their areas of strength and passion. Agyar is committed to transforming your employees into happier, more productive, and fulfilled individuals. When your team thrives, your business prospers. Wise leaders understand that providing team members with opportunities to shine in their strengths unlocks untapped potential. Elevate your team with Agyar Professional Training and witness the growth of your business.
You're listening to Walk and Roll Live Disability Stories.
Welcome back to Walk and Roll Live. I am Doug Vincent, and coming up today, we've got an interview with Autism BrainNet. Kind of the subject, we're going to learn about brain donation and autism research with Isa DeWoody and Dr. David Amaral, and they are here now. I'm going to let them kind of do a brief introduction of themselves before we dive into more information. Dr. Amaral, would you like to go first?
Thanks, Doug. I'm David Amaral. I'm a professor in the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences at the University of California, Davis, near Sacramento. And I am also a member of the faculty of the Mind Institute, which is medical investigation of neurodevelopmental disorders, which has been dedicated to studying autism and other neurodevelopmental disorders.
Thank you.
And I am able-bodied.
All right. Very good. Thank you. And next, Isa DeWoody.
Yes, my name is Isa DeWoody, and I am primarily, the mother to a daughter, Marie, who has a rare chromosomal disorder, which we'll probably talk about later. But I have almost 20 years experience in the rare disease world, both in helping caregivers and families and patients kind of navigate that, as well as engaging researchers in trying to study all of these different rare diseases.
Excellent. And where are you from?
I'm from Midland, Texas.
Well, welcome to Walk and Roll Live. We appreciate you taking time out of your day to come and talk with us and share about BrainNet. And that's kind of the overarching story we want to tell today, but we'll get into, of course, more of the details and how you guys are involved with this. But BrainNet, if I understand it correctly, just is to facilitate brain donation for research of autism. Is that, kind of a nutshell, is that what it's about?
Yeah, that's right, Doug. It is a organization that is funded by the Simons Foundation, and it really is intended to establish a resource for facilitating science into the understanding of autism and related disorders. So what we do is provide a way for individuals with autism or families with a family member who have autism or a related disorder to approach us and to allow them to make the donation of a brain to us. We then take those donations and process them for scientific research. And then in the end, as investigators around the world approach us for some specimens from these brain donations, we provide those to investigators in order to facilitate research.
In addition to using the samples yourself, you make them available to other scientific organizations across the country so they can do research as well.
Yeah, we really focus on providing a resource to facilitate research into autism and other neurodevelopmental disorders. So just by way of context, other neurological disorders like Alzheimer's disease have been studied for well over a century. And many of the clinical trials that are now being attempted are actually born out of that research that identified certain alterations in the Alzheimer's brain that are now targets for treatment. By contrast, autism really has only been studied since the 1970s or 80s. And what led us to start Autism BrainNet was the realization that despite the fact that many scientists worldwide wanted to do research on the autistic brain, there wasn't really enough tissue for them to do state-of-the-art research. So again, that motivated us to set up Autism BrainNet, which is the whole operation dedicated to making it easy and relatively and to set up a sensitive and relatively easy process for families to make a donation in a time when it's, of course, very difficult at the time of the death of a loved one. So we have started sending tissue out over the last several years all over the world, Australia to Europe and other places, and several publications have now started to appear using the tissue that we have provided. And it's important to know that one donation, one brain, can actually facilitate hundreds of research projects.
So Autism BrainNet has been around a while.
We're just about to celebrate our 10th anniversary.
Oh, congratulations. Yeah.
It really is a testimony to the vision and foresight of the leaders of the Simons Foundation to have, made the resources, the financial resource available to do this. It's not a trivial process to, set up the collection centers around the country. And we have three of them, one at UC Davis, but one at UT Southwestern in Dallas, Texas, and also one at Mass General Hospital, one of the Harvard hospitals in Boston. And we did that so that we could have a donation get to the locale for processing as rapidly as possible. And it's important for your listeners to know that brain donation is different than organ donation. So organ donation has, you can get a sticker on your license, and that indicates that you're willing to make an organization with a goal to save lives by transplanting organs to living recipients. But that doesn't actually include brain donation. So to do a brain donation, you have to make a separate and follow a separate process. And I'm happy to talk more about that process with you later in the discussion, Doug.
Yeah, I absolutely wanted to ask you about how it differs from organ donation. So definitely want to talk about that. Can we talk a little bit about the post-mortem brain tissue and maybe what you've discovered so far, and how do you utilize it to do your research?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we try and when a donation comes in, the brain can be processed in different ways to support different kinds of research. So what we do is actually try, and we've come up with a processing that we think will accommodate the greatest number of research kinds of projects. So on the one hand, so let me back up and say that we think that in large part autism is a neurological condition. It's a change in the way the brain is either structured or functions. And we're still in relatively early stages of understanding what those changes are. So how do you investigate that? Well, you can do it at several different levels. One is we know that at least 20% of autism is caused by a change in genetics, some alterations of genes that then lead to the condition. And what we've learned in the last decade or so is that if you have a genetic alteration, what's called a mutation of a gene or a variant of a gene, it can affect different body systems differently. So it turns out you can have different genetic modifications in the brain that you wouldn't be able to identify by taking a blood sample. And some of our most recent papers that have come out from the investigators that we've supported have indicated just that when you have a genetic condition like DUP15Q, which is a common genetic modification leading oftentimes to autism, that not only does it affect the neurons or the cells of the brain differently than other parts of the body, but it even affects cells in different parts of the brain differently and different cell types. And this is a key issue. It means that if we're truly going to understand the biology of autism, there's no way to do it other than by studying the autistic brain. We can't model this. We can't come up with computer simulations. And even animal models, as valuable as they are not necessarily going to give us an appreciation of what's going on in the autistic brain. So that's the genetic side. But then, of course, the brain is an incredibly complicated 100 billion neuron structure with connections going all which ways and having different transmitter substances and communicating in different ways. And again, by studying the human brain from a neuropathological point of view, looking for alterations, it's likely, and there's already evidence for it, that we'll understand which systems in the brain are affected most by the changes associated with autism. And then ultimately, when we get this information, our hope is that it'll ultimately lead to targeted treatments that will not cure autism. We're not trying to cure autism, but autism has associated with it many what we call co-occurring or comorbid conditions, things like epilepsy or intellectual disability or profound sleep disturbances. And what our hope is that by understanding the autistic brain, we will be able to develop more beneficial targeted treatments to alleviate these co-occurring conditions.
So, and I kind of imagine that was part of the goal, for treatment purposes, but there are extraordinary outcomes sometimes with autism where there are some extraordinary talents that emerge. Through the research, do you think they'll kind of maybe figure out why that is? Or is anybody looking into that?
Yeah, it's a very intriguing question, Doug. More emphasis has been put on trying to deal with some of these issues that lead to impairments in the quality of life, things like epilepsy or intellectual disability. I think one of the great mysteries of the brain that there is a little bit of work that's been done on the postmortem brain in people that are savants. I think you're talking about autistic savants, which, it's amazing, the abilities. I mean, the sort of famous one was Rain Man, but there's many others who have very varied savant skills. And so we don't really understand it, is the bottom line. But what's sort of interesting is that by looking at the brains of savants, which only a few have been done, it turns out those brains are actually showing indications of very dramatic changes. For example, the connections from one side of the brain to the other are missing in savants. So it's not so much like they have a super development of their brain, but they have an altered development of their brain that leads to their savant skills. I think in the fullness of time, yes, that would be a hope as well, that we could understand, what leads to these incredible abilities. But I think we sort of have short-term goals and longer-term goals, and that fall into the longer-term goals.
And let's turn to Isa and for those short-term goals, maybe that was part of your family's decision. So why did your family opt to donate Marie, your daughter's brain, to Autism BrainNet?
Well, it's not an easy answer, and I have to kind of walk you down a path a little bit to kind of get you to that decision, because I don't think any of these decisions to donate such a precious resource, they don't happen quickly. They develop over time, and it has to be kind of in line with, with certain values that you have as an individual and within your family. And so just to back up briefly to give Marie a little bit of color, because these individuals are so important. Let me just say that, my daughter was 18 when she passed away in 2023, but we began our journey with her in 2005 when she was born. And as you probably know, part of the diagnostic challenge is which symptom kind of arises first in your journey. And so Marie started having severe epilepsy when she was 3 months old. So this was the primary symptom that kind of brought us into the medical community. And at the time, way back then, kind of the premier, one of the genetic tests that was very prevalent at the time was karyotyping. And so she, at Riley's Children's Hospital, when she was first admitted, early onset epilepsy, not associated with fever, they did genetic testing, and they did the karyotype. And so my daughter had what's called a ring chromosome 14. So a structural variant as opposed to a monogenic type mutation. So anyway, that kind of plunged us into all of this. We got involved as a family into advocacy, and in general, we founded Ring 14 United States, the USA, and then we got involved in research, Ring 14 International. My husband is actually a geneticist at Purdue, and so we were lucky to be invited to first of all, we understood the depth and the complexity of this problem pretty quickly because of that. And we got to be at the table when they started talking science. And so we were first introduced to the idea of a brain bank way back, in 2010, probably at one of our first research conferences. And so the idea was we could really learn a lot from brain tissue. And I'll just say, one of the reasons why it was so important for Ring 14 is because animal models and even in vitro models are very complicated with the ring chromosome because they're unstable. So the thing that you're trying to study in a lab dish gets lost in rapid turnover in some of these cellular models. And so it was always in the back. We knew this initially, that our program could really benefit in a large sense from these brain donations. But building a brain donation platform and, that is a heavy lift for individual foundations. And as we got more involved in knowing the patient population, autism kept coming up again and again, especially if kids kind of, the older they got, some of the behavioral challenges associated with more severe forms of autism started to really rise in prevalence. And so pretty early on, we kind of identified the syndrome as neurodevelopmental epilepsy and then as autism. So all of these things kind of combined together. And so in the course of getting involved in rare disease and autism and epilepsy, then these ideas of brain banks kept being repeated and repeated and repeated. And one of the things we knew is that we did not want to kind of don't want to ask for such a donation in a time of crisis. Like the patient and the family always has to be forefront. And so we had seen a couple of our children pass away, as often happens with severe epilepsy and respiratory distress. And what we knew is that when we were going forward, if we were going to pursue kind of a connection with the brain bank, that we wanted to have a well thought out plan.
Yeah.
And so I say all this to say that I was very fortunate in my role as leader to kind of have all these pieces. Like I knew about all the pieces. It was something that I thought about many times from an organizational standpoint. And then when my own daughter was in crisis and everything just started to happen so quickly. And it was a situation where all things bad happened at the same time, and it was kind of irrecoverable at some moment. And when we saw that moment coming, I knew the people to reach out to. And actually, David, when they mentioned about organ donation, that was the light bulb in my head that said, no, that's not what I want. What I want is to have Marie's brain donated to the Autism Brain Network. And so I was able to call a very good friend of mine, Vanessa, at Vogel Farley, and I said, how do I make this happen? She quickly got in touch with the Autism Brain Network, and then Carolyn Hare reached out to us almost immediately, and then all the pieces started to fly together. So if I can just summarize quickly, it's the idea of knowing the importance of it. It's the idea of having the connection to make this all happen, and also this very important component of realizing that this is important before you're in crisis so that you understand the path and so that this isn't another traumatic decision that you have to make in crisis.
Yeah. And listening to you, Isa, I think I can, to me, it's I get the impression that also Autism Brain Network, you were a gift to them, you and your husband and Marie, and so because you had the sensitivities, you had the experience of going through what the people that you were probably going to approach with this idea of doing the same thing. It's not an outsider who had, even if it's a good idea, if you add to it that somebody has that kind of experience with it, I'm sure it facilitated a quicker, path to get this work done.
Yeah, 100%. I think there's a real realization that it's a gift both ways. Yeah. So the Autism BrainNet was a gift to us. They enabled this, but they really treated Marie's donation as a gift to their mission as well, and a way to kind of answer questions that, quite frankly, are very hard to answer without this really precious resource.
What's your role now with the organization? I mean, you're on here today, so I know is that part of it. So it sounds like you're still very involved.
Yeah, yes, still very involved in Ring 14 and a couple of other different rare kind of initiatives, rare patient initiatives, but yes. So it felt like something else to walk away from that beautiful community, and so very happy to still be involved.
Yeah, and just a wonderful legacy for your daughter.
Yes,
to be associated with this. Absolutely.
Yeah. I just wanted to mention, Doug, that there's a wonderful example of the parent advocates that we have as partners with Autism BrainNet, not only for Ring 14, but for a number of genetic conditions that lead to autism. And it's exactly as you and Isa said, that it's a collaboration, and it's really, and I wanted to emphasize too what Isa said about thinking about this ahead of time. This is why, we're interested in doing programs like yours, where we can bring, the suggestion to consider making a postmortem brain donation, because it really is, as Isa said, important to either, if you have the condition yourself, you can let your family members know that this is what you intend, that you would like to have your brain donated to research. Or if you are the family of an individual who may not be able to make that decision, but they could think through the process, talk among family members, and come to a decision within the family whether this is a good thing to do. And, once that decision is made, Autism BrainNet is set up to make the whole process as easy as possible. And as I think Isa again has touched on some of these things, but we have a 24/7.
I definitely want to talk about that. Just briefly before we get too far down the path, I just want to ask, and since I have someone of your stature here, just a couple of things. Don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but there's been, over the last probably 10 to 15 years, there's been this, just seems like an accelerated growth, to the listening audience. We've heard the numbers doubling and tripling of diagnosis with autism. And I've done a few interviews about this, and nobody seems to have a definitive answer. And I'm not going to pin you down or anything, but I'm just curious, with your thoughts. If I have somebody of your stature here, if you had a best guess or some theories of why that's happened. I always ask, is it better, better diagnosis protocols, or is it there actually is more cases of it? So what's your thoughts?
Yeah, so not an easy question to answer. That's probably why you don't get a definitive answer. Right. But let me just try a couple of things. One is that autism was first talked about in the late 1940s, and that's when it was sort of officially named. And at that point in time, to get a diagnosis of autism, you had to be very profoundly affected. The initial autistic individuals, tended to have no language, like intellectual disability. They tended to be on the more seriously affected end of the spectrum, and subsequently, we have diagnosed people under autism spectrum disorder with varying severity of conditions. So now, and it's really a problem in the field, because we have an umbrella that's called autism spectrum disorder. On the one hand, you could have an individual who has a very low IQ, no language function, and a whole host of disabilities. On the other hand, you can have the folks that you talked about, Doug, that have, maybe social disabilities or social, problems, but have, enhanced intelligence and no language problems and whatever. And we're trying to deal with all of those under an umbrella. And so my first answer is that our umbrella has gotten bigger, and we're including more people under that umbrella than we would have, even 20 or 30 years ago. But on the other hand, there may actually be some biological reasons why there really are more people with autism. And I'll just give you one example, but there's many. And this example is that we know that the genetic alterations in autism often are caused by what's called copy number variations. The DNA either has too much of it or too little of it. Little segments of DNA get added or get snipped out. And those copy number variations are oftentimes, even though they're genetic, they're not necessarily inherited. So it turns out that a lot of the copy number variations actually occur at fertilization when the child is initially conceived. And that's because the change is in the sperm. Or in the egg, one or the other is actually had, but the mom or dad doesn't have the problem. It's just in the new conceived embryo, and it turns out that if you look at the epidemiology of autism, as people get older, so as parents get older, the likelihood of having an autistic child goes up. And the number of copy number variations also goes up in their sperm and eggs. So if you think about it, 50 years ago, people tended to be in their early 20s or even younger when they had their first child. Now we have many, many people that are in their 40s who are having their first child. So, who knows how much of a contribution this might be, but this could be actually a biological factor that contributes to, some increase in the number of autistic individuals. And I could go on and give you other examples in terms of, pollution and other things that just give little incremental changes to the risk or the likelihood of having an autistic child. So, to answer your questions, it's all those things that that you talked about.
I tell you, that's the best answer I've gotten, when I've answered that question. So thank you. I appreciate that. It made sense. Okay. So, and one other thing again, and I don't know if this is controversial or not, but, and just briefly, but there's the whole, and you could say, no, I'm not going there, but just the vaccination whole question about it coming from vaccinations.
I can say unequivocally that there is no evidence that autism is due to a vaccination. Yeah. And there have been what are called meta-analysis where people combine all the different studies, and the one of the biggest one has looked at 6 million children who were vaccinated or not vaccinated. And it turns out that the likelihood of having a child with autism actually is slightly higher if you're unvaccinated, the opposite of what you'd predict. Yeah. And, autism, it's been, there's been debate about this over the years, but it's very likely that the vast majority, if not all autism, is prenatal. So it may not even be genetic. It could be other kind of factors, but it's all factors that take place prenatally. So the idea that a postnatal vaccination at 1 or 2 years of age is causing autism, there literally is no evidence whatsoever for that. Conversely, in places where the scare of vaccinations causing autism has increased the number of measles and encephalitis, children are really dying because they're not getting, appropriately vaccinated against something that is avoidable. So it's a good, I don't mind answering that, Doug, because
I appreciate it.
I just worry about the children who are not getting proper protection.
Good. Yeah, I definitely wanted to give you the opportunity. I feel like if I have someone of your stature on the show, we want to try to clear that up for people.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And, one other thing, as you were talking earlier, are there specific parts of the brain that you use for research? I mean, do you know that there are certain parts that affect autism more than others? Or, I mean, this is a layman just grappling with trying to figure this out.
That's another really good question. So what we think is that certain parts of the brain might be more influential on certain of the symptoms of autism. So some of the lack of what's called executive function or planning for the future, that's clearly part related to what we call the cerebral cortex, or the surface of the brain that's most evolved in humans. And so there's an enormous amount of research that's being done on the cerebral cortex, looking for changes both in genetics and in structure. But one of the things I haven't mentioned so far is that it's known that something on the order of 70% of people with autism also have pretty severe anxiety disorders. Now, anxiety is actually implicates another part of the brain called the amygdala. And it turns out that there are clear both genetic as well as histological or neuropathological changes in the amygdala that have been found in studying the postmortem human brain of autistic individuals. So again, it's and I could say the same thing about the motor disturbances. That seems to affect another part of the brain. What we don't understand now is why some autistic individuals have changes in all those structures and some in only some of those structures. That's part of what we have to do in terms of future research. But I would say that we've had interest in virtually every part of the brain from investigators to doing different types of studies.
Gotcha. So this question for you, David, or Isa, just the process of, if somebody's listening to this and, I'd love to do that. They're thinking, I definitely want to explore it at the very least. What's the process? You want to take that?
Maybe I can start just by talking it generally, and then Isa can give her personal interaction with this. So the first thing I would say is that for people, again, both people who are autistic or family members of an autistic individual, or people who have conditions that are related to autism, neurodevelopmental conditions, that please go to our website, which is www.autismbrainnet.org, just autismbrainnet.org. And there's an enormous amount of information about the whole process, more than I can tell you briefly. And I do want to emphasize, number one, that we go into talking about the fact that there really are no religious concerns making a brain donation, that it doesn't conflict with having even an open casket funeral, and that there is absolutely no cost to the family. So all of those are, maybe considerations that people want to take into mind. Go to our website. But two other things. One is that we have a 24/7 hotline. The number is 877-333-0999. That's 877-333-0999. And if somebody wants to make a donation, they can call that number. And Carolyn, our clinical director, who Isa mentioned, or Nicole, who's her associate, will lead the family through every step of the process. So there's really, they make it as painless as possible for the families then to get through the process, and they do all the arrangements. So when you make that phone call, that's the critical thing. If you just want to get more information, or somebody is an incipient death down the line and you're considering a donation of that individual, you should call that number ahead of time, and plans can be put into place early. I do want to make the point that that the reason that it's important to consider this ahead of time is because time is of the essence. So that when you die, your brain, as well as the rest of your body, goes through changes. And in order to get the best representation of what the brain was like in the living individual, we want to be able to process the brain within optimally 24 hours, but up to about 48 hours. So that doesn't leave us a lot of time to go through the transport and all the other things. So that's why we need to get a call very early. We feel bad when a family will call us, and it's been 4 or 5 days out and we no longer can accept the donation because the brain is too altered at that point in time. But that's the process. Make the phone call, or think about it ahead of time, make the phone call, and then we will help and we will lead the family or the individual through the entire process. But Isa, how did it work for you?
Yeah, it was a phone call, just like you said. It was a phone call. In my case, it was a phone call to a best friend who I knew had the connections, but then she made the phone call that you're talking about to Carolyn Hare, and then she contacted us. I will say that, part of the process and why I knew about Autism BrainNet in particular is because there's great collaboration with all of these patient advocacy organizations. So I had heard Alicia Holliday, who's the Chief Science Officer at the Autism Science Foundation, speak at different patient advocacy conferences where they hand out literature and they introduce this to families early on. And in fact, I think that was a Duke 15Q conference that I first heard about it. So there are ways to partner with the BrainNet as a leader of a patient advocacy organization to kind of build up this trust between your organization and your families and the Autism BrainNet. So want to kind of plug that. All of that information, I'm sure, is on their website. But I just want to make one other point. Timeliness, absolutely. But one of the really beautiful things about the donation is that after donation, there's a lot of follow through on the side of the Autism BrainNet. So they want to make sure that they understand, the life of your child and how that affected their diagnosis and where they fell on the autism spectrum. So there's a lot of interviewing that happens because that information, providing that phenotypic information along with the actual donation is so helpful to researchers. And so Carolyn Hare, in my case, did a beautiful series of interviews. And I just have to say, it was an unexpected blessing because it was actually a beautiful way for me to process Marie's life while I was in mourning. And who would have thought that would have been an outcome? But it actually was. It was a real blessing to be able to discuss in such beautiful terms who my daughter was, and for Carolyn to collect that information. So the whole organization as a whole, I think, just handles this donation with such grace and such thoughtfulness. And so just wanted to make sure that the families are aware of that.
Great
so
point.
It
Great
just
point.
End at the donation. There's a little bit path after that.
And I think that's a difficult conversation to have with anybody who's going through loss. And I think so many times people don't talk about a loved one, of a friend or a family member, because it's an awkward conversation. But it's like then becomes like that person doesn't exist. Right. So as painful as it is, I think you have to, it's a lesson learned there with what you said, Issa, that we have to talk about those people that we lose, so they still are alive in our hearts and minds, right? Yeah. So can I ask you, Doctor, what are maybe some of the, some big milestones that have come from research over the years?
Yeah. So, before I answer that, I just mentioned two things I wanted to make sure that we get inserted into this conversation. And the first is that, while of course we're interested in having donations from individuals with autism and other neurodevelopmental disorders, we also do collect the donations of neurotypical or individuals as well. Okay. And again, on our website, people can see, what, kinds of donations we accept. But it's important to say that, if we only received donations from those with neurodevelopmental disorders, we wouldn't know what's altering because we don't know what the sort of standard process is. So we need neurotypical donations for comparison. And now within our 10 years, we have, we've collected about 375 donations of different types, about equal amounts between the neurotypical or non-autistic and autistic cases. And that's really critical to us as well. So I wanted to mention that. But I also, apropos of what Issa was saying, on our website, again, there's a section for families, and it's called Memories of Hope. And if a family member would like, they can actually do a little testimonial to their donor individual. And we have wonderful testimonials where there'll be a photograph and talk about, the individuals as well. So I am not having, made a donation. It's hard for me to speak as Isa has about the process, but I have been told by many family members that it's sort of a cathartic situation where they feel that something beneficial has come out of what otherwise would be just a painful situation. So in terms of getting back to your question, I think speaking in broad strokes, we do know that there are genetic changes in the brains of autistics that we would not have seen had we only been able to take a blood sample. And again, these are genetic changes that are complicated. I sometimes don't even understand them myself as a neuroscientist, not a geneticist, but we have the sense that they will contribute to a better understanding of how brain functioning has been altered. And as I mentioned earlier, we have neuropathological findings as well that shows, for example, in the amygdala, I mentioned the amygdala because it's associated with anxiety, that the amygdala is a peculiar structure that the neurons, the cells that are the function, the engines of the brain, they actually increase in number up until almost the early 20s in neurotypical individuals. But what we found in autism is that there's too many neurons early on, like between 0 and 4 years, but then they actually decrease later on. And we think that this might be associated with the genesis of anxiety, and perhaps one of the big mysteries in autism is what happens when autistic individuals get older. And the sense is that there's actually more Parkinson's disease. There's a hint, just a very small hint at the moment, but it's an active area of research that autism actually could predispose to Alzheimer's disease. Again, the kinds of things that we want to be able to study in greater detail with the postmortem brain donations. So again, Autism BrainNet is an enabler. It allows this kind of research to be done. And we are excited that there's been sort of a renaissance in people's enthusiasm. 20 years ago, there wasn't the resource, so people didn't get excited about doing research because there was nothing to work on. Now we've been able to provide a resource, and people are getting excited. Groups are working together, and I'm confident that over the next several years, there's going to be some really exciting findings that are going to be able to come from this effort.
As you were many times in this interview, you were kind of a step ahead of me. I was going to ask you, what you held for the future, but I think you kind of answered it there. So I think I'm going to turn to Isa and just give her a final word before we go.
Yes. So I would just say to the families and to the leaders, look, this is as sensitive a subject as this is. There is a way to thoughtfully bring it up ahead of time and to make sure that families know that it's an opportunity if they choose to pursue it. So it is, for some families, this will be incredibly meaningful, but it's not going to resonate with everybody, and that's okay. That's okay. So but early talking about this in the early stages of this, so that you're prepared when a crisis arises, or if there's a long situation, you have time to prepare for it. But I just want to emphasize that there's just some amazing work that's being done through these precious donations. There's information learned that could not have been learned through other avenues. So please consider that, and just know that they are going to value this donation as much as you value making it.
Thank you very much, Isa and David, for taking time and talking to us about Autism BrainNet. We appreciate it here at Walk and Roll Live.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. We appreciate it. Thank you, Isa.
Thank you, Dave.
Walk and roll live, disability stories. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Walk and roll live, life limitless. Don't forget these stories. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Walk and roll live.
And we are back to Walk and Roll Live. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And Taya, do you have any events coming up? I think we figured out nothing. Do you have anything you're doing?
Well, my big event that just finished was the World Series for wheelchair softball.
Mm-hmm.
I just came back from Nebraska. Unfortunately, we did not do as well as previous years because we have a new team. We got some new players. You get the jitters. It's kind of like, it was totally understandable. I mean, these were, some of the guys' first time, and the nerves get the better of you. But we had, regardless, we had an amazing time. It was a great experience for the new ones. We did have one team member. Again, every year we had a VIP and somebody got an award. So that was really good. And then we're actually trying to form a women's team, which, we don't have yet because of the next Olympics and Paralympics that will be in LA in 2028. Well, we're trying to get softball and baseball for the Olympics back.
So I'm confused. So you're a woman.
Yes.
And you played softball, but you don't have a women's team. So you're playing on a co-ed team?
I'm playing on a men's team. It's a co-ed team.
Gotcha.
Yes. And so what we do in all the tournaments that I've been on the team since 2016. Actually, was on the team. Your brother was on my team, and he was also the coach at one point. So what they usually do is after all the games have been played, and then it's only left to championship games in any division, either D1, 2, or 3. Then the last day, the women that are there, whether they are on the team not playing or they're on the team and they do play, they get to play, they form either 2 teams, or when there's enough veterans, female veterans, will play the veterans. So the women, against the veterans. This year, we did not have enough veterans to make a team. So we just combined all the women that felt comfortable enough to form the women's team. Now, the problem that I noticed this year, I was surprised when I noticed it last year, but it was like, oh, I did not know that the team were actually made up of a lot of able bodies, women that just like, yeah, we play, we'll go in a chair and we'll play, which is nice. And we were very fortunate that they wanted to do that. But that defeats the purpose of what we're trying to do. Yeah. So we start talking to all the females that were there. They were actually a member of a team. They had a disability. They were, but they did not get to play. They were just on the team, and they were waiting to see if they could play on their women's team.
While able-bodied people were playing?
The able-bodied, yeah, it could have been just coaches that were there that were,
I mean, the disabled people that were part of a team weren't playing while able-bodied people were playing for their team?
There are some teams that have females on their team, but they don't play them. They just be on the team, and then the men play. Yeah. And so that's, to me, struck like, that's kind of weird, because I'm a female I'm the only female on my team, and I do get to play if they're, if there's playing time. Sometimes, I know I'm not the greatest hitter, so I feel like, well, you know what, I can sit it out. If you want to place, if you want to win a game, then I sacrifice that. That is, that's just what I do. And this year and previous years, I'm also keeping stats because I know I know the game, and that's very crucial that we have, because we have a coach, we have a manager, and then you need somebody that keeps stats. And that was just my thing, because I've been doing that since my kids were playing. But then when it was time for the women to pick the women's team, some of my fellow athletes and I were discussing, like, well, why don't we try to get the women that are disabled to play? Why aren't they playing? Why are we allowing And again, we were thankful that, the able bodies wanted to play with us so we could make a team.
Sure.
But the whole purpose is we want to have the disabled, women team. So then it came about like, yeah, but we're not that good. Yeah, but it's, it's intimidating. And that's what the problem lies. It is an intimidating sport. It is, a male dominant sport. That doesn't mean that we cannot play. Yeah. So we went around to all the teams that we knew had women on and like, hey, come on, let's go make a team. This is all for fun. Let's just play for fun. Let's just show, that even if we're not that great at it, but we just need to stay together and let's form 2 teams mostly wanted to have a disability.
This was at the tournament.
That was at the tournament. Yeah, we always get to play. The women's team usually play the last game.
Gotcha.
And so we did. And so we had a majority this time of more women with disabilities. And so then at the end of that game, we started to get our heads together and thinking like, what would it be awesome to start a women's team? And then we can bring this to the Paralympics. So what we're trying to do, this is what the word is, is that maybe between the Olympics and the Paralympics, there's about a 2-week break that we can maybe do exhibition games so that people that are there like, hey, wait, what is this? There's softball? There's because we cannot be the only West Coast team that goes to these tournaments, to the World Series. We need to bring more awareness. We know we have people in SoCal where you're at. There are basketball players and there are softball players.
Football
Fresno.
Players now. Yeah.
Yeah, San Francisco. We just need to get these people to come together, form a team so we can play each other.
Well, I know what they could take out of the Olympics so they could put softball or baseball
and
in.
put it back in, yes.
Well, they could take out breakdancing.
Yes, I think they have, because they will not be in LA. The breakdancing will not be in LA. So that's what we're trying to work on. It's going to be a little bit difficult because, being the only one here in the West Coast, trying to get together with the women that are in the Midwest or the East Coast. But at least, we're starting to get the ball rolling and the talk, let's talk about it. And we got 4 years to make it happen. We try to also host actually the World Series, in California someday. The problem is that we cannot find the large parking lots that are completely vacant because in California, we like to put trees and light posts in a parking lot.
Yeah.
And in the Midwest, it's like bare. It's just all we need is
wide open
stretch of concrete, and then make our fields.
Yeah.
So,
all right. Well, keep us posted. Keep us posted, and let us know when you have any events. We'll definitely post them here on our events page. Just like we have a bunch of new stuff here that we've added this week. Triumph Foundation, they've got a new adaptive sports festival or 2 coming up actually, and we've got those on the events page. Angel City Sports calendar of the events. We've got their calendar of events up, and shout out to Ezra Freck who won 2 gold medals, right? At the Paralympics that just concluded with Angel City Sports. Be nice if we could get him on. We'll give it a try. Now that he's big, I heard he was on some morning shows and all that. So, yeah, he might be out of reach for it, but we'll give it a shot. And then Eddie Flores also shared Life Rolls On. That's new to the resource page where they are epic surf, skate, and fish events that they do for adaptive athletes. So we've got that up there. And then some other events coming up. Spina Bifida Association is having a bowel health event on September 19th. They've got some experts coming out to help you out. It's a virtual event, so wherever you are, you can join that.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, Anthesis Paint and Sip event is coming up on September 20th. That's in Montclair, California. That is a live event and includes snacks and it's paint and wine, kind of a thing.
Yeah, that's what I do for
good.
Yeah, I lead that too. Yeah, we have I missed out on it a couple weekends ago. They did a rafting trip for the disabled, and I think Nature Track and some other companies. But I will keep you definitely posted when we're trying to do another one because it was very successful. It was a lot of funding, so it was pretty much free for the participants. It was an overnight. But the feedback was just amazing. So I'm very envious that, the ones that got to go. First, the rafting didn't sound too inviting for me because I'm like, I don't know about, it was, I think, class 1 or 2. I mean, not too bad.
Was that on the American River?
You know what? No, I don't think it was the American River. But once, since it was such a success, they want to do it again. I don't know.
So was it actually like rapid type of thing?
Yeah, but not dangerous. I mean, there were some. Like
so more of a lazy kind of a drift down the river. I did that years ago with Drew and some other friends of ours, and I think it was on the American River. But hot summertime, you know what it's like in Sacramento. It's hot, and I remember thinking, God, I just want to jump in the water, and then I felt the water. It's cold. Even it is ice cold. Yeah,
it's like always ice cold. Yeah, yeah. But I will definitely keep you in the loop when I get any of the information. I will email it to you. You can put it on your page too. But I definitely want to join the next time, and I don't know if it's going to be before the weather turns. That we do it one more time this year.
Oh, okay,
that would be nice. But it's just amazing. Also having the donations out there, having the funding, the scholarships, whatever they call that. But it made it, available to the people because everything that we want to do.
If you go, let us know. I want to hear how it went.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. And then the Anthesis Art Show is also coming up in November. We'll have more information on that on the events page. I think I want to say November 8th, I think is the date for that. And then Volunteers for Veterans, who we had on last week with Betty Volk. The foundation is having a comedy show. I think she talked a little bit about it. And dinner for vets by vets on September 21st. That is on our events page. You can click through and get tickets for that and come out and join us. Let's see. Resource page, Walk and Roll Live. If you have any resources you want to add, like I say, we're adding new stuff all the time. A couple of things. Autism, BrainNet, who we just talked to, is up there. And if you'd like to get alerts when a new episode comes out, you can sign up for a once a week. We don't overdo it. Once a week email at walkandrolllive.com. And then next week we have Zach Wentz. Do you know Zach Wentz? Have you heard of him? He's a tennis player, and I guess he's kind of doing some pickleball now, but he was a accomplished tennis player before his accident and now post-accident. As a matter of fact, I was reaching out to him to be here next week, and he took a while to get back to me. He said, sorry, I was at a tennis tournament, so we'll have to catch up with him and find out. And he's on the football team as well that just started, for the wheelchair football team that's sponsored by the Los Angeles Chargers. So he'll be on next week. So thank you very much for taking out part of your day and joining us for Walk and Roll Live again. Me. Thanks for listening. I'm your host, Doug Vincent, with Teo Rosa this week from the Aguiar Professional Training Studio. This has been Walk and Roll Live, Disability Stories, Life Limitless.
Walk and roll life. Life's the best. Walk and roll life. Life limitless.
Where voices unite, Walk and Roll Live, a guiding light, a platform vibrant, a beacon strong, for the disabled community to belong. Shared narratives weave stories untold, in conversations deep hearts unfold. Finds home, camaraderie's embrace. Walk and Roll Live, a sacred space. Empowerment's anthem, awareness call, inclusivity's banner, standing tall. Trusted source, we stand, providers aligned, for unity's dance, in hearts entwined. Through trials and triumphs, tales we share, strength and vulnerability we dare. From every corner, voices rise. In Walk and Roll Life, our spirits fly. Shared narratives weave stories untold, in conversations deep hearts unfold. Finds home, camaraderie's embrace. entwined. Through trials faced and mountains climbed, in unity's embrace hope we find. From every walk and every roll, walk and roll life, a beacon's role. Empowerment's anthem, awareness call, inclusivity's banner, standing tall. Trusted source, we stand, providers aligned, for unity's dance and hearts entwined. Through trials faced and mountains climbed, in unity's embrace hope we find.